Hello and welcome to today's session. It's so good to be with you. My name is Professor Peter Pinar, and I am the director of the Leaders of Africa Institute. The Leaders of Africa Institute is a school that provides upskilling as well as advanced techniques in data analytics, tech development, as well as research and research methodology. And I'm so good to be with you as the Leaders of Africa Institute is sponsoring and leading today's session. It's one of two sessions today focusing on a platform called Datawrapper and data visualization in that platform. So hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Yes,
So
please.
let's start off by looking at some data because that's where our journey does begin. It begins with data. And you can see on your screen here an example of a data set. This comes from the Afrobarometer, which is a public opinion survey of over 35 different African countries on issues surrounding governance, elections, politics, public health, even the business climate, the economic climate of the country. It asks a variety of different questions, and some of you may have heard of Afrobarometer before. So it's a survey, and it's asking people, in this case, what you can see on your screen, a question that's on everyone's mind, which is, in general, how would you describe the present economic conditions of your country? Now, if I asked you to answer this question, I'm sure there would be a variety of different responses to this. And you can see there are a number of different response categories that Afrobarometer gives individuals. Very bad, fairly bad, neither bad nor good, fairly good, very good, and also, although not read aloud, people can also say they don't know. And if you look at this figure right here, you'll notice a few things. You notice that it's really hard to answer some basic questions. So if I were to ask you, for instance, what is the country where people are most pessimistic about their economic conditions in their country? In other words, the economic conditions are not very good. It would probably take you a few minutes to perhaps figure that out. Now, you may go about looking at this by looking at what percentage of the people said very bad. And so if we go down, of course, we're taking time to look at this. So let's go down the list. We find, okay, we have Gabon says 58% very, very bad. Is there anything larger than 58%? Okay, here we have Malawi 58.3. Let's continue down the list. Okay, we have Sudan 59.6. And okay, so that's the highest, right? So we may say Sudanese people are the most pessimistic about their country in this year, in the period when the survey was done between 2016 and 18. That's the data we're seeing there. You could look at it another way, which is to combine these two categories of very bad and fairly bad, because fairly bad and very bad are just a matter of degree of badness of the economy, if we can say that, right? So perhaps just looking at very bad is not a great way of encapsulating pessimism. So what are we going to have to do here? Well, we would have to look at this figure and we would have to add up all of these different totals, which we're not going to do here today. But again, it would take a while, right? And so the point here is that when we look at this raw data in a table, which has been summarized from the original data set, yes, it has, but still it's a bit of a raw data table here. It's really hard for us to answer basic questions and answer them quickly, right? And one of the key things about data visualization is telling a story and simplifying the data that we have such that our audience, which is the key focus of a data visualization, is able to answer very basic and important questions, both for themselves, by looking at that figure in a moment's notice, right? In a very quick way. So this isn't a very good way of visualizing data. It provides us a lot of information, but it's not going to help us tell the story very well. Again, if we looked at the optimism factor, so that's the fairly good and very good, we would run into the same issues as well, right? You have to be doing a lot of mental math in our head, if we can say that. So the same thing goes for data visualizations. Not every data visualization is a good data visualization. Let's take a look at these two data visualizations on our screen right here. We have a figure A and we have a figure B. And in this case, we're taking that data that you just saw in the table on the first slide, and we're including it here into different data visualizations. Now, the question I have for you, so feel free to add this in the webinar chat, because I want this to be interactive here, and we're going to have some time for questions and answers and other comments, and I am following the chat in real time. I want you to tell me in the chat which data visualization, in your view, is the better data visualization. Figure A or figure B?
The chat has
What do
been
we say?
disabled.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael. You unmuted yourself. You can share that way as well.
Figure B,
And why?
because it looks more structured.
It's more succinct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So Michael says figure B because it has this sort of brevity to it. It's succinct. What else? Any other thoughts in the chat or by raised hand? Which of these data visualizations would you prefer if you were writing a piece on how people thought about the economy? And so feel free to open up that chat. I do want to make sure that everyone has that ability. Go ahead, Haruna.
Yes, I think figure B is good because the bars looks a bit consistent. Unlike figure A is messed up.
Okay, so there's some consistency to the bars. And I think this concept is consistency. What you're also getting at is something along the lines of what Michael's also mentioning as well, which is there's a lot less going on. It's kind of easy to read, right? So if you thought that figure B, like Haruna and Michael suggested, is the better data visualization, in most cases, likely you'd be right, right? It distills the same information, but it breaks things down in a way that we can really understand and interpret it. So remember when I said which is the country that is the most pessimistic, right, in many ways? Well, we can see that countries like Liberia are at sort of the top of the list here because we're adding the categories together. We're not showing you all the data, but we're still translating the key message here to our audience, which is key. Without 2 additional or 3 different statistics here, we're able to distill this in a simpler way, right? And the other thing we notice about this figure, and actually in both figures it does this, so that's a good feature of both of them, is it's also sorting these figures, right? We don't have to guess the order, right? It may be hard to find your country if you're looking for instance, Ghana or Kenya. You'd have to sort of look through the list to find your country. But at least we're able to answer the basic question, which most of us want to answer, which is which countries are people more pessimistic? In this case, we're seeing the highest level of pessimism that is there, right? So figure B is a great visualization. So the point is, in creating a data visualization, it is not about showing all the information and all the data that we have, but rather making decisions as a data designer about what data we use and how we portray it, right? And we're going to get into a little bit of pieces there. And Talika says that the chat is now open, so I apologize that it wasn't open before. So again, I mentioned at the outset, please feel free to share in the chat where you are joining us from, so city and country, as well as what your background is. What are your professional interests? Are you interested in research? Are you interested in tech and data analysis? Feel free to share that in the chat. I'd love to get to know you as well. And I'll be also sharing some opportunities with you at the Leaders of Africa Institute scholarship opportunities at the end of today's session. So why do we visualize data? Well, a couple of things, and thanks for sharing in the chat. I now see everyone sharing, which is absolutely lovely. So why do we visualize data? Well, first of all, as we sort of alluded to in my introduction here, we have a massive amount of data. Some of you have heard that term big data, but even medium-sized data means that we have a lot of it. We also want to be able to visualize data because it helps us make better decisions and be able to analyze the data when we're looking at it, just as we saw in this opening exercise. The third thing is it's about easily conveying that useful information to our audience, and then finally translating that information in ways that are easy to understand and interpret. So think about throughout this session that opening example that I shared with you, because that is what we are working on today. Welcome to you, Michael, from Accra, and also welcome to you, Yao, from Accra as well. I would also be a Yao as well, since I am born on the same day of the week as you. All right, so let's look at data visualization software. We have a lot of it, and I'm sure some of you have come across these platforms. At the Leaders of Africa Institute, we generally use R and Python for a lot of the data analytics work that we do at the Institute. They are also platforms that we can use for data visualization of their sort of particular flavor. There's also Tableau, and I mentioned our institute will be doing a session on Thursday on Tableau. There's Microsoft Power BI, there's Excel. Excel is still a data visualization platform. It can do very basic ones, but it is still a platform to do that. We have SAS, we have Flourish, we have Datawrapper, which we're going to be looking at today. We have Canva, Infogram. These are more simplistic platforms for data visualization, but we can still use them for data visualization. But today we're going to be zeroing in on Datawrapper, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit why we are going to be focusing on Datawrapper, because it is a wonderful platform that likely you've seen already some of their data visualizations, even though you may not have known that it was Datawrapper. And welcome to you, Haroon, who's joining us from Wa, Ghana. Interest in research, currently learning and coordinating monitoring and evaluation for a WASH project. Wonderful. Good to meet you here today, Haruna. So, why Datawrapper? Datawrapper is one of many of these data visualization platforms, but it has some really great features, and it's a reason why a lot of data visualization folks are using it. Number one, it's easy to use. Number two, is easy to learn. Number three, there's no need for hard coding, so you don't need to know HTML, a bunch of code to get it to work, which is really lovely in comparison to some of these other platforms I mentioned. There's no installation, so you don't have to worry about that situation where you are downloading software and then updating the software. If you use R and Python and you're using a desktop version or a laptop version of it, you will understand this. In this case, we're going to be using a web-based platform, so it's really easy to manage. It also has some great features of live updating. So if you are getting new data and you want it to populate into your data visualization, guess what? Datawrapper can do that. So if anyone has followed election data as it's rolling in, they create those data dashboards or data visualizations that's telling you the vote tally, telling you who's winning in a certain constituency, and they're always updating as the votes are coming in. You can do that with Datawrapper, which is a really cool feature, which means you can tap into certain types of databases to do that. Datawrapper is also used widely by some of the most international organizations, including here at the Leaders of Africa and the Leaders of Africa Institute, the International Labor Organization, the World Economic Forum, and there are other major companies that use Datawrapper for their visualization. Now, there are some limitations of Datawrapper I want you to be aware of. The first thing is, and I think this is a good thing, but there are also limits to it, which is there is a free version for you to use. And so today you're going to be able to follow along. I'm going to be sharing with you the data, and we're going to be going through the data together. So feel free to follow along with me. But the free version does have some limited features to it. However, you're going to see that despite some of these limited features of the free version, there's a lot you can do with the free version. In addition to that, your organization could often purchase licenses for you to use if you are working at an organization that would like to use Datawrapper. The second limitation of Datawrapper is you can't create a dashboard with many figures side by side. Now, many of you have seen some of these data dashboards. You often see them in Tableau. Again, the subject of Thursday's session that we were doing here at the Leaders of Africa Institute, or Microsoft Power BI or R using R Shiny. All these platforms, you can create those data dashboards, right? Where you have multiple little figures there that you can all use interaction with and different things of this nature. With Datawrapper, you're really focusing on creating one particular figure that you're going to be implementing in your piece. And you can create multiple figures and then bring them together in your piece. And that is both a limitation of Datawrapper, but it's also a strength of Datawrapper, because this is why Datawrapper is loved by people who love to publish work in, say, reports or online publications, because you do not necessarily want a big dashboard, but you want some really elegant and beautiful looking figures, and that's what Datawrapper gives you. So Datawrapper can create a lot of different charts, and I'm going to be taking you through a full range of different capabilities here that you're going to work with me in this workshop on. Bar charts, column charts, line and area charts, pie and donut, dot plots, scatter plots, maps galore. And there's a beautiful thing we're going to see in the maps about just how many maps you can do. Many of you are joining us today from Ghana. You can do maps of the regions, the new regions, right? We're always adding new regions to our Ghanaian landscape, right? But you could also go all the way down to the constituency level and be able to have data that you want to display at lower levels of disaggregation. It's really great for some of these things, right? So you can do symbols, chlorophath, locator maps in Datawrapper. You can also do some basic tables and combine tables with line graphs or bar graphs. So we're going to see that we're going to combine all these figures into one figure, one elegant looking figure. So that's a really beautiful thing about Datawrapper. It has an intense amount of capabilities, and they're always adding to it. It's not a platform that's sitting still, right? They're always adding to it as we go on. So before we take a look at Datawrapper and these capabilities and we work through the data, I want to hear from you in the chat, because we're always wondering what figure we use, and we're going to be talking about using figures that match or are appropriate for our data set, which is an important decision we have to make as a data designer. But I'm curious, for your sake, what is your 3 favorite figures? When you look out there in the world of data and data visualization, what are your go-to figures, either ones you create or ones that you like to look at? So do you like lollipop graphs, heat graphs, Sankey graphs, Gantt plots, bar charts, scatter plots, line graphs, box plots, area charts, any others that you could think of, maps? Tell me in the chat, what are the 3 most useful figures that you generally see in your space or that you generally make in your space? So feel free to share in the chat. What are your 3 if you could only keep 3? In fact, Tableau and Datawrapper shared this on social media. They were asking people, what are your 3 favorite figures? So what are your 3 favorite figures before we take a look at Datawrapper and its capabilities here? So what would you say? So feel free to share in the chat the list of your favorite 3. All right, so Haruna says which is great, would like a bar chart, a box plot, and a scatter plot. Great. Those are really useful. I'll say scatter plot is one of these ones we see quite a lot of, but people make a lot of mistakes with it too. Box plots are quite nice as well. Good. Any others want to share? Queen Star, Yao, Gabriel, Nas, or Michael? Or Emmanuel? Okay, we see in the question and answer area. So Emmanuel says bar chart, line chart, area chart. All right, definitely could see that everyone loves our good faithful bar chart. And it's really important to point out, and I love doing this exercise, is that even though bar charts are so ubiquitous out there, they are ubiquitous because they are really helpful. They're good, right? You don't have to be afraid of making a lot of bar charts because they are oftentimes the chart that are our go-to chart for things, right? So keep that in mind. It's not a problem to use bar chart. I also love the line chart. Emmanuel said that, but line charts are oftentimes misused by data designers, right? They think anything can be on a line. But to be a line chart, you have to be showing something that changes over the course of one variable, i.e. the variable on our x-axis, right? You can't use categorical or also what we call discrete variables on our x-axis if we're trying to do a line chart, or categorical variables, that is. All right, Michael says column chart, pie chart, scatter plot. So pie charts and scatter plots are those two figures that are often misused by data designers, right? It's always something I have to look out for. Scatter plots are one that we may plot things in the incorrect way or on the incorrect scale. We're going to talk about that today. Pie charts are also confusing because sometimes everyone thinks we can use something for a pie chart, but the only time we can use a pie chart is when we're showing a part of a whole, right? We have to show that it's a part of 100% of something, not just sort of showing, again, amounts of things. We can't show like amounts, but we have to show that it is part of the total. So pie charts are oftentimes misused. You can see that out in a lot of spaces. So thanks for sharing these. Again, we all have our favorite figures that we use and that we leverage for our work. And again, don't be afraid to use that handy old bar chart because we're going to start there today. So let's take a look at some examples of the uses of Datawrapper in publications, right? So you can see here, these are from the publication that is called The Economist. The Economist is a public affairs magazine and online publication that many of you may know of already. You can see that they have these figures here. Take a look at them. And they are all in the style or using the platform we're using today, Datawrapper. And one of the key things you can notice about this, and you'll notice about Datawrapper, is there is a real elegance and beauty to the way that Datawrapper does things. And that's because Datawrapper has sort of a template for your data design. It doesn't give you a lot of flexibility to do, to create things, but that is also a good thing as a data designer because sometimes flexibility can be used to make some terrible design choices. Whereas Datawrapper is able to channel and use your data in a way to really bring it together in a way that's going to make things beautiful and elegant. But you're going to see there's still a lot of things that you can customize, but it allows you to discipline your figure. So you can see some here from The Economist, and you can see this sort of beautiful elegance to it. Nice, the use of colors, the spacing, the amount of different information that can be shared here. Next, we'll take a look at some figures from Datawrapper from Silas. Silas is and was a scholar at the Leaders of Africa Institute's Data Plus Design for Development program, and he was in the program last year, and he was looking at this issue of mobile money transactions in Ghana. So if you are at the Leaders of Africa Institute, whom I represent as the executive director, you will know that all of the programs are based around creating capstone projects. And Silas's capstone project was looking at mobile money transactions in Ghana. As you'll know, there has been recently implemented a tax, as there has been a tax on a lot of things these days, on mobile money transactions that was there to mitigate some budgetary crises as well as the fallout economically from COVID. And he was looking at whether some of those measures had led to increases or declines in the activities of individuals when it came to mobile money. That was his capstone project. And I will share in the chat the links to the Leaders of Africa Institute's social media platform, and you will know that the fellowship on data visualization is open for applications, just open for applications. That's the link. I'll put that there. I'll also share more information at the end. But this is his project, and you can see some really beautiful figures that Silas, has created out of Datawrapper here. For instance, this is the number of transactions and the amount of volume of transactions over time. So you can see how things are changing. And you can see right here where you see the announcement of the e-levy, you see a significant decline in the number of transactions and the value of transactions that are taking place on mobile money. Because if you recall, and if you know anything, and I know many of you are from Ghana, so you'll know this, when that tax was announced, people began to find other mechanisms of doing transactions to avoid those transactions. So Silas can clearly see in the official data a drop-off that occurs here, whereas there was a steady increase throughout this period up until this pretty precipitous decline, right? It'd be really interesting to see if some of that has recovered since the tax, but he was looking at that period just after the tax was implemented from that officially released data, right? So these are all examples of Datawrapper and an example from one of the data and design scholars from 2023 finishing up in 2024. So I've shared the links of how to apply for that, and I'll talk more about that opportunity and the scholarships related at the end of today's session. So you can see some other figures here. I'm just going to share some other figures that show the capabilities of Datawrapper before we get into the Datawrapper workshop component. So you can see right here, this is COVID-19 cases in South Africa. So you can see a couple things. This is an area chart using sort of a line in area. So you can see here, these are the number of cases, and then you could see the number of deaths. And then you can see this part is shaded, which is another key feature of Datawrapper, is the ability to tell stories by shading and annotating your figure as well. So you can see this is sort of over time, and you can compare deaths and cases of COVID-19. You could also do scatter plots, and scatter plots that also include a bubble component or a third variable that shares the size of those bubbles right here. So right here you have GDP per capita, which is the size of the economy. And then you have life expectancy, that is how long people live, generally speaking. And then you can see that these pieces are related to the population of the country and other variables that show the size, right? And you could, so high GDP per capita equals healthy life, right? You can see some annotations here in this figure. Here's a scatter plot. You can also get more, fine-grained, and this isn't real data here. This is data that we're just exploring and thinking about. So as you know, when you buy and sell in the market, oftentimes you have to pay what one calls a market toll, right, to the powers that be within the market, right? So this is a disaggregated map of the greater Accra area. So you'll probably be, for many of you from Ghana will be familiar with it. And this shows that Datawrapper does have the ability to do that subnational level of data visualization there. So you can see right here all the different spaces here. And you can see the variation perhaps in the market toll that you have to pay on a regular basis, for instance, right? Again, this isn't real data, but it shows you what you can do. You can see some example annotations here as well. You could also do that bar plot. You can see the beautiful coloration here to show positive and negative, and also, again, the ability to include these helpful pieces that tell the story, what we call annotations here. We could also do bar and line. Remember when I said that Datawrapper has the capability of combining different figures, of showing multiple figures. So for instance, combining something that we want in a bar chart with something that has a longer time horizon in a line chart, you can do that here as well. It's also a cool feature. So the key point here is that we have this great tool, Datawrapper, and this tool is widely used by folks and has a wide range. And at this point, as we get into the workshop, I want to encourage you to embrace what we're going to do in this workshop, because there are a lot of opportunities out there. There are a lot of jobs right now that are looking for data storytellers. You can see some recent jobs here that have been posted looking for data storytellers. You got a lot of people who are working on data storytelling. And the great thing about Datawrapper using these figures is that we can do a lot with it. But there's one last point I want to do before we start the workshop and getting into the data, which I'm going to now put in the chat, the link to download the data. So feel free to use the link that's in the chat to download the example data that I'm going to be using for this workshop and follow along with me. That would be lovely. But the thing that we're going to be focusing on as we do this hands-on part of today's workshop is to realize some things about our audience and things that we always want to keep in mind. The first thing we want to keep in mind is that our audience has oftentimes a lack of statistical literacy. They are not like you, right? Our audience is oftentimes not statisticians, data scientists, data enthusiasts, data advocates. That is not oftentimes our audience. Usually it's within businesses, it's business professionals. It may be society or citizens if you're doing public awareness work, as many of you have suggested in the chat that you are, right? So we have to keep that in mind. The second thing that we want to do in telling the story and why we're going to build in annotations and other pieces is that people don't oftentimes relate well to statistics and abstract numbers. So we want to distill some sort of narrative or story around the data. The third thing is we want to make it really engaging. We want to find ways to make our data visualization something you can interact with, and we want to find ways ultimately in our data visualization that can ensure that we're humanizing the subjects of our data visualization, which oftentimes the subjects of our data visualization are us people, right? And so we want to make it as human as possible. So as we're going through this workshop, this is something that I really want on the back of your mind when it comes to creating our data visualizations. So let's get in. So I want to encourage you now to create a free account at datawrapper.de. I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. It's DE because this data wrapper comes from us from Germany, so it's datawrapper.de. Let me try and give the full link in the chat so that you're able to find that website and sign up. You can easily take a free account. There you go. Create a free account for yourself and use all the features that I'm going to be using for free, because I'm going to be using and piloting it on the free version so that you can leave today's workshop and do everything we do without spending a single penny on it. So let's begin that. So the first thing I want you to do is to download that data, which I'm going to put, again, the link to the data in case you've just joined us. And this is a data set that's in Excel that we can use for our purposes. So let's take a look at the data set. I'm going to pull down my slides here. Let's take a look at the data set here. And everyone should have a data set that looks like this. And this data set is not just one data set, but is actually several different data sets, right, that I've brought together for us to discuss and to look at. And hopefully there's some data sets that you find interesting as well. So we have here the data that we were looking at before, whether the economy is good or bad. So this was that demo data you saw at the beginning. We also have some data on GDP growth, which is the size of the economy for all sub-Saharan African countries from 1961 all the way down to 2020. You can see the decline there from COVID, right? So this is sub-Saharan Africa development growth overall. We also have some data on SA. So this is just South Africa GDP growth. So we can look at individual countries here. We have regional unemployment results. So this is at the regional level. So you'll notice the data is happening at different, what we call levels of observation or levels of analysis, to give you some opportunities to use those. We have some GDP data for the last few years and education expenditure data on African countries, including some of the countries you're from, including Ghana here. I know a good number of you are from Ghana. I can see from the last name. We also have some additional GDP growth data. We have some other additional Gapminder data from countries around the world, looking at GDP, life expectancy, as well as population. We also have some additional data on GDP. We have a lot on GDP because that's the growth of the economy. It makes it simple. We have some unemployment data from Nigeria at the regional level, right? These are the 36 states of Nigeria. There are 36 states of Nigeria plus the FCT, which is the capital area. which is where Abuja is located. So we've got those here. So we've got some subnational data here. We have some COVID cases of Africa at the single day level. So how many cases were there on a specific day? We have internet access, the amount of people who have access to the internet across all countries around the world. We have infant mortality. We have inflation by region. We have men activity in the labor force, and then we have a tab that shows where all of this data is coming from, the actual source. So this is real data. It's coming from the World Bank oftentimes, Afrobarometer, Gapminder, Our World in Data, International Labor Organization, or the IMF, right? So this is official, real data, not made up. It's just packaged for us so that we can easily work with this data together, and we can create figures that actually matter, right? That actually we can tell a real life story with. So hopefully you've downloaded it, that data. I'm going to open up Datawrapper now. So I'm going to pull up my Datawrapper. So if you look at Datawrapper, you're going to come to a website, and this website is going to look like this. And you can scroll down. It talks a little bit of how it's used, and you can see all the different organizations that use it. Moody's uses it, Quartz Africa, Quartz uses it, Axios, World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the New York Times. Major publications around the world are using Datawrapper. Hence, we're talking about it here. And it's talking about how easy it is to use, and that's one of the cool things that's great about it. And you can see here the pricing here. You can see that it is quite expensive, and that's why organizations oftentimes pay for it. But you can create a free account here as well. But you can see it is quite a lot of money for a year. So it's about $6,000. That's something that an organization would generally pay for. But the free version you're going to see is great. So I'm going to jump into my account, and I'm going to go back, from there. You can see that there's a lot of different information. There's the blog. So you can see the blog post, and they're always keeping up on the blog post. And there's something called the river. And you can reach the river from your dashboard. I'm going to show you how to do that because most of you will be in your dashboard. So if we go right here to this, you'll see Academy and River. Going to River is really nice, but River is the place where you find all of the figures that other people have made, right? So one of the things I want to encourage you as somebody who's getting into data visualization is to look around you, to look at what other great work that other people have done and be inspired by it. There's no problem with looking at a figure somebody has done and using some of the design and other data choices that they've made. And River is a great place to get some inspiration if you're using data in Datawrapper. So you can see all these beautiful different figures that people are doing in different concepts, different languages even, that they're doing their visualization in, right? So you can see a lot of things. So get inspired, right? Get inspired as you're getting into your data visualization and you're working through them. I think that's one thing to think about. So let's go and let's begin to create a figure. And so let's open up this data set here. I'm going to create a trusted line graph of the economic growth of sub-Saharan African countries in GDP from 1961 to 2020. So I'm going to open up Datawrapper. I'm going to create new, and I got to make a decision. I got to make a chart, a map, or a table. So let me create a chart. So this is going to be a chart. So let's open up a chart. And the first window it's going to show me is the upload data. Now there's an easy way to do this. There's a hard way to do this. There are a lot of different ways that we can do this. So we can copy and paste our data right into this dialog box, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. That's a really cool feature because that is really easy to use. You don't have to worry about importing the right information. Just have a spreadsheet like this and cut and paste. I'm going to be showing you how that works. You can also upload a CSV file here. So you can see you could upload a CSV file. You can also connect to a Google Sheet. So you can enter a URL for a Google Sheet, and this allows you to upload from a Google Sheet. And the best thing about the Google Sheet is that it allows you to continually update that visualization as new data comes in. You can also link to external data sets. So for instance, if you have a data set stored on a server that's in CSV format, which means comma separated values, you will be able to access that data set directly from that server and be able to bring that into your data. And the nice thing is you can keep updating that information and be able to serve it either from Datawrapper's server or from your own server as well to keep the data flowing into your data visualization. Just be aware that when you are having automatically updating visualizations, that you need to have some quality control measures built in, because you need to ensure that you're not pumping out data that hasn't yet been viewed, cleaned, and vetted. And that has happened before. There have been some times where election results data has been published before they clean the data because they had an automatic process of publishing. So make sure that if you are doing an automatically updating visualization, that you have some quality control measures put into place. But you can do that by connecting to an external CSV or a URL right here. We're going to use the simplest way of doing this. We're going to just use copy and paste, right? But what I'm suggesting here is there's a lot of different ways that you can get your data into Datawrapper. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to copy and paste. Feel free to follow along with me. Everyone should have the data. I'm going to put that data again, the link in the chat. I know that some of us have joined us a little bit later. So that's the data that you can see on your screen and that you all can download and work through with me in Datawrapper. So let me copy this. And let's open up Datawrapper here. And I'm going to paste right here. And you'll see here we've got all the data here and the information. So the next thing we want to do is we can proceed. And what Datawrapper is going to use, it's going to use a bit of machine learning that it has built in to look at your data and to make some decisions about what type of variables you have, which is really, really nice. What it's noticed about this data is that it notices that it's a year. And you could actually click on the column and change it here, but it does a really good job understanding what kind of data it is. So let's here, you can see if we click there, they're going to say it's a date. It's going to think this is a date. I'm going to say, I can say that this is a number, or I can just say that it's auto or text. And then we can also do other things like this. We can round the decimal places. You can do it here, or you can do it in your data visualization. So I'm going to show you how you can do it. So I can show you different ways of seeing this. I'm going to do it all decimal points or significant digits. So you can see that that doesn't round it at all. It shows all the data there. But we can round the numbers here or later in our data visualization, because rounding is our best friend. It keeps things simple. Nobody needs to know the GDP all the way to 0.001. In fact, GDP per capita, or measures of the economy, like most measures in the social world, are actually estimates. So they're not precise. So I always love to see when people show me like point something for a survey result where the margin of error is plus or minus 2 or 3%. That's giving your readers a false sense of precision. So not only is it a little bit misleading, but it also is a situation where you're also cluttering up your figures with unnecessary decimal points. So fun fact, or fun thing to think about when it comes to our data visualization. So you can play around with this, but the data looks pretty good. And I've helped the computer know by clicking on the column what it is. But the machine learning built into Datawrapper is really good at identifying that. So let's proceed. And the next thing we're going to do is it's going to start to tell us, what figure we should use. It always defaults to a line chart. So just because it defaults to a line chart doesn't mean that's the figure you should use, right? But in this case, kind of is the figure we want to use, right? Because again, coming back to what I said earlier, we have over time sort of something that moves over time, and we're looking at trends. So we're going to use a line chart. That's the default for it, but usually you're going to use something else. But you see all these different figures you can do, including many of the figures that you say are your favorite figures to use, right? And so the next thing we want to do is we want to begin to refine this chart. So you can kind of go in order of what it is here. In fact, they have a back and proceed to like sort of guide you through the process. So the horizontal axis is determining is the year, which I think is the right decision, right? Because it's over the year. But we can also add minimum and maximum values. So we can say, I want a minimum value of 5 and a maximum value of, for instance, 10. And so in most cases, if it allows you to move them, which there's a little bit of constraint, it's going to be able to move. Now that doesn't make any sense because there's not any 5 and 10 years, right? What we would want to do is go here because this is where it makes sense. But for the range, we can also, if we wanted to do a range, we would say 1970, and then it's going to change the figure. So we don't have to start cropping the data, before we bring in the data. We do have to clean the data. You notice there's no data cleaning capabilities here in Datawrapper, right? We're going to leave that for R or Python or Excel, other platforms we can use for that. But once we bring in the data here, we can do some different things. So if I want to look at just the let's say 1980 to 2000, the 1980s were known as the lost decade for many African countries because it was a period of low economic growth, right? So there was some economic growth after independence of many African countries, but the economy's kind of tanked in the 1980s. There are a lot of international and other factors that contribute to that. And you can see that there are significant declines in economic growth, that happened in the 80s, right? Then some increases, and then right here, 2000, we're thinking COVID, right? So that's explaining a lot of that. But I'm going to take off the restrictions here, and I'm going to take off the restrictions here, although I do want to have it go to 12 so that I can have my entire figure being there, right? You could do 11 here. That could work, and that way it includes this top point here that is oftentimes missing. And then here we have 2.25, so we should probably say 3. That's going to be able to get the full distribution there. So it's going to do a pretty good job, but we want to play around with that to get a nice scale there. We can hide and show the grid lines. Oftentimes grid lines can be helpful, but they can also be confusing. Or you can just use tick marks here. You can see that. I'm going to show the grid lines. I'm going to hide the grid lines for this figure. I can show the labels here, inside, outside, or auto. So this is allowing us to do that. I can put the axis on the left and the right. I can also do that for the same thing for the years here as well. But again, one of the things to keep in mind is oftentimes you want to declutter your figures. Sometimes people have so many lines and they get to the point where there's so many that they're not actually helpful. Sometimes it's important to just have a clean and elegant figure. So I'm going to actually remove all the lines, but you can see that you can add those lines into your data visualization very easily. Now I can also customize the lines and the colors. So I can customize this color here to any color I want. So I can see there are some colors it suggests here, but using a hex code, which is a color code, you're able to add in the color for your organization or your scheme for your paper or whatever it may be that you're using for this data visualization. You can change the colors and adapt them. I'm going to use this green color here. But one of the key things to keep in mind as you're doing data and design is to be inspired by color palettes. And one of the places that I love to go is something called the Adobe Color. Adobe Color is the platform that is used from Adobe that allows you to look at different color templates. And so if you look at color.adobe.com, you can say create. It allows you to create ones. It allows you to explore color palettes so you can see all these different moods and approaches. Take a look at color palettes because, believe it or not, color is important. Color communicates, right? If I use a red, red communicates danger or alarm sometimes in some cases, right? Other colors, are more warming and pleasant, right? Depending on your subject, you want to make some really careful decisions about everything in your data visualization, all the way down to color. So if you do apply to the Leaders of Africa's Data plus Design for Development program and become a fellow or a scholar, get into the program next year. We talk a lot in that program about data design and color, as well as human-centered design in our data visualizations as well. But just know, for our workshop here today, that Datawrapper allows you to select any color you'd like. I'm going to select this nice green color. I think it really stands out, gives it some presence here in this figure. Now I can do some additional things. I can have the labeling. So this little label can jump top. I can put it to the right. The right doesn't look really nice. Oftentimes I'd put it right here, or I take it away. And one of the key features of doing a data visualization is if you include information in one place in your chart, you do not need to include it in another place, right? So for instance, many of you see this figure right here saying GDP growth rate, and you see that the axis right here is not labeled, right? And there's a reason for that, because we're going to add a title that's going to say GDP growth rate. So if you say GDP growth rate in the title, you do not need to say that the line shows GDP growth rate, and you also do not need to say that the axis means GDP growth rate, right? And this is confusing for some of you because many of you have gone to school, primary and secondary school, and your teachers said, make sure you label all of your axes. And in general cases, that can be a good thing. But if you are saying what you are saying somewhere else in your figure, you do not need to label all your axes. In fact, that can clutter up your data visualization. And Gabriel, you're asking for the link to the fellowship. I'll share all the Leaders of Africa links, including the link to the fellowship, which is that first link there. And the application can be found there. I'll talk more about that application at the end of today's session as well, the fellowship as well. So we're going to remove this for now. We're not going to use any line labeling. We're going to just keep it clean, elegant, right? So we're going to keep it like that. There's some additional things that we can do. We can add dates in different formats, right? So there may be different ways that we want to display the dates, like years in this format, so on and so forth. We can change that. We can change the values here to different types. So I'm going to change my Y values to rounded percentage points. So I'm going to change that there. And you can see that now it's changed this. And I can even change the line symbols. I can add the first and last point. I can do every point that I have data. And I can use different shapes for it. I can use stars. I don't like that. I'm going to use circle. You can do any way you want to do this. I like first and last. I think first and last is kind of a nice, elegant feature here. You can change the size of the circles as well by changing the size here, and the opacity of those circles as well, which is whether they're see-through. So you can make them a little bit light. Look at that right there. There we go. Actually, I like it fully. You can have fill lines below. So you can create nice little a shade of them below them to create some sort of area effect. And I can change the opacity here. So look at that. Look at how our effect is really, our figure here using these effects is really taking shape. And look at how elegant and beautiful it looks, right? But wait, there's more, right? We can do a lot more with this. We can change the thickness of the line by clicking here. I like a nice, a thinner line here, just what it comes with. We can do that there as well. Okay. We could show tooltips. Tooltips are these little pieces right here. I want to choose the year here so that it looks nicer, 1963. And this is actually telling the chart how to make these tooltips, because this figure is interactive. It's not just a picture, but you can also highlight over it like a data visualization, interactive data visualization. So great. The next thing I'm going to do is go to annotate, and I can create a title, GDP per capita. Okay, and I'll say, sorry for the delay. There's a little bit of delay since we are on Zoom on the webinar. Sometimes things slow down a little bit. Actually, just to keep things simple, because I'm having trouble typing here a little bit. There we go. So let's say SSA GDP per capita. We can also show a description. So we can say, so we can say SSA countries have seen periods of growth and decline. So this description piece is one that goes right under the title here. And again, I apologize for the lag. That has to do with just kind of the nature of the sharing of the screen and the webinar interacting a little bit. You can add some notes. You can say what your data source is. So let's say World Bank. So I'll do that there. You can also have a list, a link to the data set so somebody could download the data, and I'll put the link that I shared of the work from this workshop there. So I'll put this here, and so now somebody can find the data and actually click on get the data and find the data. And then finally I can add some annotations, so I can add some figures. So I'll say right here, for instance, lost decade. And again, I'm doing these very quick for the sake of time, but you can add these in here, and I can drag these around. So this is the lost decade. Let me do another text. And this is going to be say COVID-19. Okay, so I'll say something about COVID-19 because this is the period of decline, the shutdowns, so on and so forth. You can change a few of the different things. You can draw a line to the annotated text. So you can have a little bit of a line here. For instance, I'm going to take off the line here for the sake of time, but you can play around with that, and so on and so forth, right? So you can add these annotations here, and there's a lot of different pieces that you can play around with in terms of outlines, in terms of the size, in terms of the position, so on and so forth. You can also add highlights. So if I wanted to highlight this range, I can click on a highlight, and I can highlight there. Let me highlight another range, the lost decade. So there we go. Actually, that's not the lost decade. The lost decade should be in the 1980s. So let's move that. That isn't the lost decade right here. Sort of the lost decade period. Actually, economies were growing at this early phases, you can see. So there we go. There we go. So we begin to tell the story by adding in these other additional features here. And now you can see, wow, this is a very beautiful figure, right? This begins to tell the story quite nicely. So the last thing we're going to do is publish, and then we're going to create some other types of figures here so we can look at some intricacies. So there's multiple ways you can publish this. You could publish this online. So if I click publish now, it's going to publish online, and it's going to give you some information. It's going to give you a link to the data visualization. So if I click this link and I open up a web browser and I type it in, it's going to take me right to that visualization. So there it is, full screen. It is also going to include for sharing, so it's like a normal size link. So if we look at this, so it's going to look like this. So there's a sort of a normal size one. And then it also includes an iframe embed code that allows you to embed this into a web piece. So if you're writing a blog post or you're publishing something that's online, you could also use an iframe to embed your data visualization in there. And the nice thing about that is it's going to be very interactive. It's going to have your tooltips here so that people can play around with it. You could also publish this just as an image. So say you're using this for a more two-dimensional report or some sort of publication. You can download as a PNG, and that's just going to simply download the image, and you can decide to include just the chart or the full header or all the other information on there, and then you can download it. And then it can also be transparent. So transparent is important if you're going to overlay this figure on another background. You can use transparent. So you can simply download the image, and it's going to take a moment, and it's going to download this as a picture for us. So let's pull up the picture. Let me drag this across, and there we go. It's ready to be included into a report. So the process of publishing the figure is going to be the same thing that we'd always do. So how can I use it in my presentation, says Hope. That's a good question. You can do this if you do this in a presentation, for instance, a research presentation. I strongly suggest downloading it as an image and then being able to use the image. Now, you won't be able to use the tooltip. You can use the tooltip if you embed the web-based version. If you have a presenter software that allows you to use an iframe, then you can embed the photo into the actual visualization in there. And more of these online-based presentation tools, as well as PowerPoint, have the ability to pull in, iframes. So you can use that. But in most cases, if you're just doing a regular presentation, download it as an image and use it as the image that I just shared with you before. So feel free to share questions in the chat as we go. I am monitoring that in real time. Selassie says, what makes Datawrapper different from other data visualizations tools? You may have joined a little bit late, Selassie, perhaps. I talked a little bit more about that section earlier in the session. I think one of the key things that makes Datawrapper very key is that it creates a very visually pleasing way of showing and displaying your data, one that major organizations use to display their data. The weaknesses of Datawrapper is it's not a tool that you're going to use for data analytics. So you're not going to be using this to, say, run models on the data, right? It's more about taking the data that you have and displaying it in a way that's going to tell the story. But there's more on that, and I'm sure you'll be able to access that in the recording when it is released. All right, so let's create some other figures here. So let's do, for instance, let's do I want to go into the maps. So let's take a look at this internet access. So this is a list of all the countries and internet access and penetration. So I'm going to add, for instance, in some cases you're going to have to do this. I'm going to add country here, and I'm going to say internet penetration, which is the fancy word to say like how much internet that there is. And so I think this is numbers from 2018. If we check our list, we can see that. But it's a little bit of an old data, so this is increased. Just know that. That issue is always coming up, and it's all countries around the world. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to Datawrapper. I'm going to create new, and this time I'm going to do a map. Okay, so let's go here and go to a choropleth map. So we have different types of maps: locator maps, symbol maps, choropleth. Right, so again, I said that it has a full range of maps. Take a look at the maps. I'm going to show Ghana, for instance. Let's see all the different maps in Ghana. You got the 2002 local district maps. So if we click on this, you'll see this is just one district. You have parliamentary constituencies of Ghana, for instance. You got the overall districts. So at the higher level here, these are the sub-districts. So on. You got the districts and the regions. So you see here's the regions. I'm trying to find the regions there. So on and so forth. So everything is really nicely used for a lot for most African countries has been sort of brought into our choropleth map background. So I just wanted to make you aware of that you can drill down to the subnational level. So I'm going to choose a world map because I've got world data, and I'm going to click next, and I can upload a file here, or I can cut and paste. I'm going to copy and paste my data, and it's going to use machine learning to hopefully match most of it. And it seemed like it matched most because I cleaned it. So one of the key things you want to work on when you're using any sort of use of data is making sure your data set is cleaned and ready to be used in the way that you want it to be used. And so you want to make sure everything is thoroughly cleaned. I've cleaned this in advance so that we wouldn't have errors, but just know that you need to make sure your countries line up in terms of the name. And there are always some countries that are a little bit confusing. Countries that have changed their names, like Eswatini. Eswatini used to be called Swaziland, right? So in some data sets it's Swaziland, some data sets it's Eswatini. Another one is Cote d'Ivoire. Some data sets have Cote d'Ivoire, and other data sets say Ivory Coast. And then others with Democratic Republic of the Congo will have Congo, comma, DR, or Dem Repub, or Democratic Republic of, or any different variation. So when you're matching things to, say, a map, you need to make sure your names are lining up because you need to have a variable that you're matching that data set on. And so that can be a challenge for using some maps or other features that require this matching. I've cleaned this data set for you, so you should be able to get this, and you can see a preview of this visualization coming up here. So I'm going to go next. I think everything is good here. We've seen how we brought it in, and then here we go. Here is our beautiful internet penetration of the world map. So you can see different variations in how countries are or are not connected to the internet. And again, you could change the color scheme here. You can do it either custom, or you can use some of the color schemes that it provides here. I do not like that color scheme. I like either this one. This one's really nice. I love this one. It's a nice blue. And you can see, we can see these things here. If we go back to add data, we can take the values and we can decide to round things either here or somewhere else. You can say format here. I could do percentage. There it goes. That's the scheme right here. I'm gonna sort of round the legend because I don't want that. But and I would keep the legend here, or I can use steps. I actually like steps because steps show you the different gradations of the internet penetration. So look at that steps right here, and you could actually color different aspects of the steps themselves if you are looking at it here. So you can say how many steps you want. Let me have 10 steps. That doesn't make sense. It clutters up our figure. 5 steps is a really nice one, and it allows us to see that variation of internet penetration a little bit better than the continuous gradation piece. Okay. Let's take a look at some other pieces here. I'm going to make the map zoomable. So this allows you to add the zoom feature here that you may see on certain maps, and you can tell us where. You can hide regions without data. So Western Sahara gets hidden here because there's no data, or the default is sort of this gray color. You can see that. That's the Western Sahara piece. You can add padding. You can add the height, and so on and so forth to the figure. So let's go here. So we'll say internet access, and let's say 2018. So, and we could say the data source, World Bank. We can click, the actual data set that we're using, so on and so forth. I'm not going to do this here. Everyone sort of figured out how to do that here. The only other thing that we may want to do here is deal with sort of the annotations piece. So we can add some custom annotations here. So sort of the global south or global north, you do use annotations here. We can add some labels to our map. So we can say show map labels. And we can show a certain number of countries. Well, I'm going to keep this off because you can hover and you can see. Let's just assume people know it. The last thing you can do is you can customize the tooltips. So it says like country is the top and then internet penetration is the bottom number. And you can actually do this here to round. So I'm going to round and I'm going to take off this. And then it's going to round the tooltips for me. And I could actually do more. I could say internet penetration and I can do parentheses and then it's going to add in that little feature to the tooltip. So you see how I did that? I've rounded it using this little feature down here. And I've also added some text there for some context for the data. And if you have multiple data variables, you can add them into here as well. So that's pretty cool. Really nice map here. I proceed to the layout, final things that I want there. I can add an embed link. So if somebody wants to embed it on their website, take it from me. I can have download options for my readers. I can do this in dark mode. I can change the theme. There are also different themes here. So you can do high contrast. And here's a colorblind test right here. So you can see right here, these are some features for accessibility for figures. So you'll see that right here, dark mode. So this is another way of looking at it. Doesn't look great in dark mode. I'll put it in light mode. And then you can proceed to the end. Oh, and I forgot to show, there are also these social share buttons as well at the bottom. So you can have this such that, where's that? So that you can have folks be able to share this on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, also known as X. Or you can manually enter the links that you want to have shared. So that's pretty cool. And then you publish it just as you published the last one, either online or as an image. The only way to copy this to do a drill through, Haruna, is to ensure that you embed the actual figure here. Although you can see that you're not going to be able to do like crosstabs and things, although there is some sorting figures in the other figures that I'll show here. Now we've got about 10 minutes or so in today's session, so I'm going to go through these last remaining figures pretty quickly. But the point is you're getting the handle about how Datawrapper thinks about using data, and then you'll be able to go from there. So let's take a look at another type of figure. Let's do a dot line. I love these ones. All right, so these are two GDP growth figures from 2018 and 19 for countries. So let's copy this. And we're going to do a dot line plot. I'm going to create a new chart. I'm going to copy and paste the data. It's going to use machine learning to figure it out. Everything looks good. It's got 2 years. I can go on this to just kind of make sure everything looks good. It's fine. All right, let's go. Proceed. So I'm going to do a range or a dot line plot here. And look at that. I'm sure some of you have seen these figures, right? Where they have like one and the other, so you can see the difference between, say, 2 years. This is 2019 and 2018 and 2019 growth. So you can see the countries that are growing or the countries that have had the decline. So let's take a look. Let's look at this. And then we can refine this one. You can have the range start and stop. And we can decide that we want to have them just at the end or the start or both. Or we could say percentage change. So this can show us the percentage change or the raw difference. It will do all of that. So I'm going to do percentage change and I'm going to round it. There we go. Actually, let's just do the difference there. So that's good. So you notice how it's rounded it, and notice how it's getting simpler and simpler, right? So you can You can label the first range, so that labels the dates on the top. Or you can have it have some sort of key on the figure as well. So I want it on the left. I think that looks a little bit better. So you could change the colors here of the ends. So you can have it a gradient. You can have it a fixed. Keep it simple. And then you could change the different colors that you want to what you want to use here. I'm just going to use the main colors here, right? And that's another key feature here. The other feature you want to do is sort the rows. So this allows you to sort. Now you can sort by the starting amount, the ending amount, the difference, or the change. So these are countries that are growing negatively here. And then these are countries that are growing more positively in this difference. And I can reverse the order so that the positive ones are on the top. So Mauritania, Gabon, just regular Congo, Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Seychelles, these were all countries that were growing the most between 2018 and 2019, right? And you could make sure I would add in the labels to the labels to these ones as well. So like that. So it adds so we know what years. So final is say GDP growth 2018 versus 2019. So there we go. You can add in the description. And then there you go. You've got a nice chart that shows the difference that we can sort in different ways. Again, you may not like how I've sorted it here because it may be a little bit confusing, but you can sort based on start. I can show the start amount, and you can sort on the start. So that's the countries that were already growing highly to begin with and seeing what they're doing. So this sorts on the start value, or you could sort on the end value too. So where they end, and I want to show end, I could show where they've ended, right? And that figure looks like that. So feel free to make decisions for yourself in terms of how you would want things to look like. You got annotation here. You can hide. You can select elements. You can deal with different layout elements as well. And then finally, you can publish. Hope says, can you use like 4 columns to do a visualization as an example? Well, this is 2 columns, right? So this is 2 different data sets here. That 2 different years that we're doing here. What you may be thinking about is what I'm going to do next. I mean, there's so many different types of figures that one can do here. That's what I want to point out. And for the sake of time, we're only able to do some. But what I do want to do is a split graph, and a scatter plot. And then I'll talk about the fellowship opportunity as well. So let's do bar and line. Let's do bar and line here. And yeah, let's do bar and line for the sake of time and the scatter plot. So bar and line plot is going to give me, I'm going to show you a bar plot for education, but I'm going to show you a line graph for these ones. And let's hope this works. So I'm going to copy this data. And this time I'm going to create a table. I'm going to go up to create new, and I'm going to use the third type that is here, and that is table. And I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to go here. And I'm going to describe it so it's got multiple columns here of data here in different types. So now what it's going to look like is this. So this is sort of Hope what you're talking about. Here's a basic table. But I want to do a few things. The first thing is I want to add some ranks. Ranks is like number 1, number 2, number 3. We can add those. I can stripe the table to add this feature here. And I can make it searchable. I can actually add a search bar for people to interact with it and show how many rows I actually want. Maybe I don't want all my countries here. Notice there are 3 pages here, so it doesn't complicate people, right? And I could also sort the table, which I'm going to do in a moment. But I want to do more than this. I want to create some figures within the figure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the columns here. These are the columns in my table. I'm going to hit my shift button and select here, and then I'm going to turn these into a different type of figure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. There's a lot of different information here I can change about formatting in this table for each column, right? And I can make cell based on categories and different things that I can do to highlight different data in my table. But I'm going to show selected columns as a tiny chart. And then it allows me to do a column or a line chart. I'm going to do a line chart, and I'm able to actually create a mini line chart that shows the GDP growth over this period within the table. Look at this. So I'm actually adding an additional figure. I'm going to fill below that line and add the line, and I want the first and last value. That adds a nice flavor to it, so I see where it started and I see where it ended up, and I see the trends that had happened in that period. And I can do the format here. Again, I'm going to do this. I'm going to round, and I'm going to make it a percentage. So always make sure to round. That's always suggested. That simplifies things here. Look at that, how beautiful that is. And I actually want fewer countries shown on the top. I want a 10. So I'm going to show 10, and then people can search. Let's make it searchable so people can search and find their countries and their ranking there. So there we go. I've got a beautiful figure right here with a line chart here. Now I'm going to change educational expenditure into a bar chart. So I'm going to do that. That gives me the option. So I'm going to do that here. And it's going to be sortable. I could show it as a heat map, which gives it a background color to this. So like countries that are higher are darker, countries that are lower are lighter, things like that. I could change the bar color here. I can give it no background. I kind of like this background here. I can make them slim. I like the normal. I can make the range, so on and so forth. So the last thing I can do is I can add an active heat map here. The heat map's going to add different things to different columns. So depending on how I look at it, I can do that. But I don't like that, so I'm going to deactivate the heat map here because I'm trying to keep this very simple. You could customize the headers here. Let's see here. You can customize the header and edit different rows to highlight different things here as well. So that's a kind of another cool feature of this aspect of the piece. Final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort the table, and I want to sort based on educational expenditure. And that allows us to sort like that. So the point is you can play around with this. So you can see Lesotho spends the most on educational expenditure according to this data, followed by Botswana, Eswatini, Senegal, Ghana, so on and so forth. And you can see that next to the GDP growth numbers right here. And again, you can change the titles here to correspond to what you want them to be like. And then finally we can annotate. Say GDP growth, and I'm not coming up with very creative titles, but that's something that you have to always think about. And education expenditure, so on and so forth. And then you can add in the description and other information here as well. But look at how beautiful this is, and if it's posted on a website, you can scroll through and you can see all the countries, or you could search your own country in there and it's going to pull it up for you, right? So this is a nice way of showing and visualizing multiple different visualizations all in the context of one visualization, right? So it's very cool. Last thing I'm going to show you is a scatter plot for the sake of time. And so I want to highlight all of this data here. And you'll notice that scatter, I've labeled the type of figures you can make with the data. So after today's session, feel free to download the data, which I'm going to put again in the chat so that you have it after I cut and paste this one so that you're able to do it. So I'll create new and chart. Proceed. Okay, everything is right because I've done it. I'm going to just change the name of these so that it comes out nicely. And population. There we go. Great. Let's bring in this data. Let me copy and paste the data for you. And again, I'll be sharing the links to the fellowship at the end of today's session in just a moment. And also how you can apply, and also mention that you engaged with the Institute in today's session as well. There's an opportunity for you to share that. So I've copied and pasted all that data in here, and this is what we get. Nothing useful. That's the default. So I've got to go to scatter plot here, and it's going to start to use some information here, and it's going to say GDP per capita versus life expectancy. That's not bad, but I want to refine things a little bit here. And when we're using sort of scales that are very different, like this is in the tens of thousands, like this is a whole big scale versus life expectancy, which is like, like 60, ranges from like 60 to 100. Sometimes you want to log one of your terms, and logging them makes it sort of straighten out the curve and stretch out the distribution. I know this isn't a statistical analysis class, but in the fellowship at the Leaders of Africa Institute, which I'll talk a lot about the data science piece behind visualization, in addition to what we've talked about here as well. So you can see that piece. You could see you could see how I've logged this. And I want to come down here to the bottom, and I'm going to show a trend line. And since I've done this in non-linear way, I've done this in a logarithmic way, I can do that. So this is showing us that as GDP per capita increases, the life expectancy increases as well. So in other words, how wealthy your country is going to be related to, generally speaking, how long people live, because your healthcare system is more, you spend more, so on and so forth. We can add sort of a labeling and other things. We can change the colors of the dots as well, and the size of those, and so on and so forth. But here is some key things that we can also do under the annotate piece. We can highlight certain ranges. We could also label regions, for instance. So we can add labels to our regions. And I'm going to customize the tooltips first. So I want the country up here, and then I want the GDP per capita, and then I want the life expectancy, and I'm going to say GDP per capita, and then life expectancy. So once you highlight over these ones, look at what I've done here. And then you can add a space here. The full syntax reference is here. So you can have a way of looking at how to do it. And a way to make another line here is doing a little bit of HTML code, like the break. So there we go. Look at that. Now our tooltips look cool. We got the country at the top, and then we have the GDP per capita, and then we have the piece there. And I'll say and then I'll add USD. I can even add those features to it. So I don't want percentage. I want the $sign. Sorry. There we go. There we go. Look at that. So I can do that. Take off that. So I can do my tooltips. I've got those done. Let me see if I can add the regional piece into this as well. So I can do shape. And I can do the different regions will be different shapes. I would say fixed shape for regions. And I can go here and I can add different shapes for the regions. Well, that's what I can do if I want to do that. Or I could do fixed shape here. And let's see if we can, let me just pull up my notes here to see if we can. Let's go to customize colors. And so for customized colors, we can go around and we can select the colors for individual observations. So we can change, for instance, you want to highlight Ghana or Nigeria here. You can find Ghana or Nigeria here, and you can actually change the color of it so that we can see where it falls on here. I can also say, well, I want regions to be different colors. So I can create a nice one where I'm actually highlighting, Africa is going to be green here. So all those ones will be green. Asia will be orange. Europe will be sort of off yellow, so on and so forth. Right? So you can make this sort of fun and interesting by looking at all the regions and adding in different ones so that we can sort of distinguish between the regions as well. Right? So we can do that as well. The other thing we can do is we can lastly create a bubble plot from this by changing the size to reflect, say, the population. So say we want the bigger population countries to be sort of bigger in terms of their dots. So there we go. This is what we would call. So you got India, and you got Thailand, you got China, which is here. It's hard to hover over it, but you can see this. And when I'm hovering over one of them, they're hiding all the other regions. And so you can sort of see the differences within the African region. You can also do that by clicking up here, which is another last thing I want to share about Datawrapper, is it doesn't have all the interactive features of, say, Tableau or Power BI, which Tableau I'll be covering on Thursday, but it does have these nice, useful features of being able to play around with the figure. So the last thing I want to just do is I want to say a title here, GDP per capita versus life expectancy. And I can add some different annotations here or different things. People live longer in wealthier countries. All right, so there's a little bit of a lag, obviously, due to the fact that we are in a live session here, but we can add a little bit of annotations there to let's say richer countries, so-called richer countries. Now, inequality plays a role in this as well. So there we go. And then obviously the last step here is to publish here. Again, development does not always lead to better health outcomes. There are some countries here that are off our line of best fit. And that's United States is, in fact, one of the countries that has a high level of GDP per capita, but has some of the most troubling health outcomes in some cases, in comparison to many of its peers. So again, that gets us thinking about a lot of the topics. And that's what our data visualization should do. It shouldn't just be dealing with data. It shouldn't just be making it look nice, as we talked about in this session, but it also should be about telling the story and having people think critically about what you want them to look at and what you want them to think about the world, right? And that's the point of data visualization. So with that, I want to talk about the fellowship opportunity as we close and invite you also to continue your learning in Datawrapper. Of course, I've shared that data with everyone so everyone can join in using Datawrapper. The link is on here and the data set is in the chat as always. But I want to invite you to apply to one of the great opportunities that we have at the Leaders of Africa Institute, and that is the Data Plus Design for Development Program 2024. Applications are open between now and January 15th for our incoming cohort. This program is focused on design and data fundamentals. It focuses on Datawrapper, but it also focuses on Tableau, Microsoft Power BI, and Flourish. And there is a heavy influence here and an emphasis on the use of data, finding data, bringing data, solving data issues in what we are doing. So it is a very robust program, and in addition to that, one of the key things about this fellowship and this program is that you work on your own project. You are not doing exercises for the sake of exercises, although there are some exercises in the program. In this program, you propose at the very beginning of the program a data visualization capstone project that you want to do. And we've looked at some pieces of one of the capstone projects earlier in the session. And then you get to pick the platform in which you want to do that data visualization. And then you get mentorship over the course of the program to create that advanced visualization that really speaks to the story that you want to tell with the data. And then at the end of the program, there is a massive international showcase in which you present your visualization to international audiences. Many folks who have come through this fellowship have not only gotten jobs or advancing in their careers, but have gone on to have their visualization win awards as well. There is, we'll be offering this year 3 full impact scholarships to attendees of this conference. So when you apply to the program, please note that you learned about this opportunity on the application. You'll notice at the very end there's an opportunity for you to do that. But even if you don't receive a full impact scholarship, the cost is highly subsidized by partial scholarships for this program. And so let me put in the chat a link to the application and the program page, which is the first link. I've also included the way to connect with the Leaders of Africa Institute's mailing list, as well as the link tree, which provides other pieces, as well as the LinkedIn address for the Leaders of Africa Institute and the official WhatsApp group. So you're welcome and strongly encouraged to apply, particularly if you are interested in data science, if you're interested in design, if you're ultimately interested in telling stories that use data. And so with that, I want to conclude today's session with just a quick note in addition to this wonderful opportunity that I've now shared the links in the chat. And that is the next session that the Leaders of Africa Institute, which will be hosting and sponsoring as part of the Africa Digital Skills Conference. And that is this Thursday, not tomorrow, but on Thursday, the last day of the conference. And that is at 2:30 p.m. GMT, so same time as we started today. And that is going to be data visualization and design in another platform, Tableau, which is going to have some different and additional functionality to Datawrapper and a different play off of how we do data visualization. So I hope to see you there. And in last closing remark, I'd like to say thank you to Mobile Web Ghana and in particular Florence for hosting the Africa Digital Skills Conference. The Leaders of Africa Institute and myself as the director of the Institute have always been supportive of the African Digital Skills Conference. And this is our 3rd year in support of the Africa Digital Skills Conference because we do believe that this is a really wonderful opportunity for folks to network across countries, just as they do at the Leaders of Africa Institute across over 30 different African countries. And we really love the work that Mobile Web Ghana and Florence and her team have done. And so with that, I want to close out this session and feel free to reach out to me or the Institute if you have any questions. So I want to thank you for joining us. Take care and bye-bye.